The warning light had been blinking for 6 hours. Nobody told Lieutenant Kael Voss. Not because they forgot, not because of a system glitch, because the alien crew of the ISV Meridian had made a quiet, collective decision, the kind that doesn't get written in logs, that the human didn't need to know. Sector 7 jungle. Off limits, restricted, forbidden. Every species on board understood this instinctively. The Velfan navigators refused to even map it. The Greth engineers had hard-coded a proximity alarm into the shuttle bay doors. Even Captain Zorak, a being who had survived 3 galactic wars and a supernova at close range, would go visibly pale whenever someone mentioned it out loud. They called it Kethvara. In the old language, it meant the place that eats. And it wasn't metaphor. Sector 7 was a 400-kilometer stretch of dense, hyper-evolved jungle on the planet Dura 5. The flora was carnivorous. The atmosphere played tricks on navigation systems. 3 separate expeditions had gone in, 0 had come out. The last crew to attempt it had been a team of 12 Greth scientists, experienced, well-equipped, optimistic. Their emergency beacon had activated on day 2. It had been broadcasting for 11 years. Nobody had gone in to answer it. So when the Meridian crew finally pulled up the planetary scan and saw what the sensors were reading, they assumed it was a malfunction, because the scan was showing heat signatures. Organized, structured, geometric, deep inside Kethvara. Navigator Tisha leaned closer to her screen, her 4 eyes narrowing. "That's impossible," she whispered. The Velfan didn't use that word lightly. Their language had 17 different terms for unlikely, and they reserved impossible for things that genuinely broke their understanding of reality. She ran the scan again. Same result. A structure, a campfire, and what appeared to be, and this was the part that made her tentacles go rigid, a hammock. Captain Zorak was on the bridge in 40 seconds. He studied the readout, said nothing for a long moment. Then, very quietly, "Is anyone missing from the crew roster?" First Officer Dean checked. "All accounted for, sir. Except—" He stopped. His expression did something strange. "Except Lieutenant Voss. He signed out a Class 3 shuttle yesterday morning, logged it as a nature walk." The bridge went absolutely silent. Tishev pulled up the shuttle tracker. The signal was coming from deep inside Sector 7, stable, stationary, like it had been parked there for hours, like whoever was inside looked at the 400-kilometer death jungle and thought, "Yes, this is fine." Captain Zorak pressed the comms button. "Voss." His voice was controlled, barely. Static. Then, "Oh, hey, Captain. Great timing. Do we have any extra rope on the ship? I'm building a second hammock. The first one faces east, and the sunrise here is unbelievable." Nobody on the bridge moved. Tishev looked at Dean. Dean looked at the engineer. The engineer looked at the captain. Captain Zorak closed his eyes. "Voss," he said slowly, "do you know where you are?" A pause. Then, cheerfully, "Jungle? Yeah, it's great. Very alive feeling." He had no idea. Or, and this thought would keep Zorak awake for weeks, maybe he did. They tried to call him back diplomatically. That lasted approximately 4 minutes. First Officer Dean had suggested a casual retrieval. Open the comms, tell Voss there was a mandatory crew briefing, get him out before anything in Sector 7 noticed he was there. Clean, simple, no panic. It failed immediately. "Briefing?" Voss had said, his voice carrying the specific tone of a man who was extremely comfortable and had no intention of moving. "Can it wait like 2 hours? I've got something cooking." Something cooking in Kethvara. Chev made a sound that had no human translation, somewhere between a prayer and a scream. "What?" Zorak said, each word arriving separately. "Are you cooking, Lieutenant?" "Stew," Found some root vegetables about a kilometer east. Big ones. Orange. Smell amazing. I tested them first, obviously. Ran them through my field kit. Totally non-toxic to human biology. A cheerful pause. Couldn't find that information in the ship database, though. Are these a documented species? Because if not, I'm naming them. Silence on the bridge. Engineer Brex, a Greth, 7 feet tall, built like a siege weapon, afraid of almost nothing, slowly sat down in his chair like his legs had stopped working. "He's foraging," Brex said quietly. "In Kethvara, he's foraging." Chev pulled up the threat index for Sector 7. She turned the screen so Zorak could see it. The list was longer than the ship's maintenance log. 17 apex predators, 4 of them unclassified, meaning they'd been detected on scans but never observed directly, because every observer had been eaten before filing a report. 11 species of carnivorous plant, including one that could move at 3 kilometers per hour and had been documented pursuing prey for up to 6 days. Atmospheric anomalies that caused hallucinations in non-human brain chemistry. Spore clouds that dissolved certain types of metal. And in the middle of all of this, one human making stew. "Voss?" Zorak's voice had abandoned diplomacy entirely. "I need you to listen very carefully. Sector 7 is a Class 9 restricted zone. It has killed every expedition ever sent into it. There are organisms in your current location that our best scientists have never classified because contact with them is invariably fatal. You need to return to the shuttle, right now." A long pause. "Huh? Zorak repeated. "I mean, it does explain the big cat thing." Every head turned on the bridge. "What?" Chev said. "Big cat thing?" "There's this creature, been circling my camp since last night. Huge, 6 legs. Kind of looks like a tiger if a tiger also had armored plating. I wasn't sure if it was aggressive or just curious. It hasn't come closer than 30 meters, so I figured curious. I tossed it some of my ration bar this morning." The silence that followed was a different quality than before. Deeper, heavier. Dean pulled up the threat index and started scrolling frantically. He found it. 6-limbed apex predator. Armored, solitary, territorial, extremely aggressive toward any biological presence in its zone. Listed behavior toward intruders, immediate and lethal. Status of every recorded encounter, fatal. Dean looked up slowly. It took food from him. Nobody had an answer for that. Not yet.
Captain Zorak made a decision. They were going in. Not because protocol demanded it. Not because regulations required a rescue attempt when a crew member was technically, somehow, unharmed. But because something was happening inside Kethvara that defied every database entry, every scientific record, every collective memory of every species on the Meridian. And Zorak needed to see it. He assembled a retrieval team, 4 members, heavily armed, full hazmat-rated environment suits. Greth engineer Brex, reluctant, sweating, gripping his plasma cutter like a comfort object. Chev for navigation, because her spatial memory was perfect even when instruments failed. Medical Officer Sen, a quiet Velthon who had treated more trauma wounds than anyone on board. And Zorak himself. They landed the shuttle at the sector boundary. The jungle wall rose in front of them like something alive, which technically it was. The trees here were wrong, too tall, too dark, the canopy so thick overhead that the light filtering through had turned a deep, bruised green. Vines moved in patterns that didn't match the wind. Somewhere ahead, deep, rhythmic, patient, something breathed. Brex checked his scanner. 17 threat signatures within 200 meters. "Captain," he said quietly, "the signatures, they're not moving toward us." "What?" "They're moving away." Chev looked up from her navigation display. Her expression was unreadable, which for a Velthon meant she was experiencing something she genuinely couldn't process. "That's not documented behavior," she said. "Nothing in Kethvara retreats. Nothing here has ever needed to." They pushed forward, deeper. The light got worse. The sounds got stranger. Once, just once, something massive shifted in the canopy above them, and Brex raised his plasma cutter, and Zorak put a hand on his arm and shook his head. Whatever it was, it kept moving. Away. 40 minutes in, they smelled it. Stew. Actual, genuine, good-smelling stew, rich and earthy and warm, completely absurd inside a death jungle on an alien planet. Shev's navigation system pinged. 50 meters ahead, the heat signature cluster she'd been tracking from orbit. They broke through the tree line and stopped. Lieutenant Kael Voss was sitting on a log next to a small, expertly constructed fire, stones arranged in a proper ring, kindling layered correctly, smoke angled away from the wind. Above it, a metal camp pot. Around it, the most organized campsite Zorak had ever seen outside of a military manual. Hammocks strung between two trees at a precise angle. Gear sorted, labeled, waterproofed. A small perimeter of sticks arranged in a pattern that took Zorak a moment to recognize. Tripwires. Primitive. Effective. Voss looked up and smiled. "Oh, good. You brought people. I was going to need help carrying the specimen samples back anyway." Specimen samples. But that wasn't what froze the retrieval team. It was the creature behind him. The six-limbed apex predator, the one the database listed as immediately and lethally aggressive, was lying on its side 3 meters from the fire, eyes half closed, breathing slowly. It looked, with absolute no exaggeration, relaxed. Voss noticed them staring. "Oh, that's Gerald," he said. Brex's plasma cutter hit the ground. Nobody picked it up.
Gerald, Zorak repeated. Flat. Empty. Like a man whose brain had briefly disconnected from his mouth. "Yeah," Voss stirred the stew casually. "He showed up last night, kept circling, like I told you. I figured, okay, either he's hunting me or he's curious. So I ran a quick behavioral analysis. Circling pattern was too slow for a predator closing in. No vocalization, no lowered posture." He glanced back at Gerald, who chose that exact moment to make a deep rumbling sound and roll slightly onto his back. Curiosity. Classic curiosity behavior. Same as Earth-big cats. Teshev stepped forward slowly. Her scanner was running. She stared at the readout like it had personally insulted her. "His cortisol equivalent," she said quietly. "It's low." "Relaxed," Voss confirmed. "Yeah, took about 2 hours. I didn't approach him, let him set the pace. Tossed food underhand, low trajectory, non-threatening arc. Avoided direct eye contact initially, kept my voice level." He shrugged. "Standard large predator introduction protocol." "Standard," Brex said. The word came out strange, hollow. "I mean, it's basically the same across species. Predators are predators. They respond to the same core signals: threat assessment, resource evaluation, territorial respect." Voss tasted the stew, nodded, added something from a small pouch. "Gerald figured out pretty quickly I wasn't prey and wasn't a rival. After that, it was just patience." Zorak looked at Gerald. Gerald looked at Zorak. Gerald made a sound, low, resonant, somewhere between a growl and a purr, and shifted his enormous armored body slightly away from the captain. "He doesn't like sudden movements from strangers," Voss said helpfully. "Give him a minute." Zorak realized he hadn't breathed in approximately 30 seconds. He fixed that. "Voss," he kept his voice very controlled, "walk me through everything, from the beginning. How did you even get into Sector 7? The shuttle bay doors have proximity restrictions." "Oh, I went around those. The restriction is coded to the main bay. Shuttle C has a separate launch corridor, emergency rated, no proximity lock. It's in the technical manual, Chapter 47, I think." Teshev was already pulling up the manual on her datapad. Chapter 47. Right there. She turned the screen toward Zorak with the specific expression of someone who just discovered a critical system vulnerability and wasn't sure whether to report it or simply lie down on the jungle floor. "And the carnivorous plants?" Sen spoke for the first time. The medical officer had been silent since Gerald. Professional discipline holding, barely. "The database lists 11 species in this sector. How did you—" "Avoided them." Voss pointed west. "The mobile ones track carbon dioxide. I kept moving east, downwind. Routes on the static variants are always oriented toward the water source. Once you map the drainage pattern, their coverage zones are predictable." He paused. "Also, the orange vegetables I found grow on one of the carnivorous species. Parasitic relationship. The plant protects them. So technically, I had an escort." Complete silence. Somewhere above them, something massive shifted in the canopy. Then moved away. Again. Zorak looked at his crew. His crew looked back at him. Sen spoke first, very quietly. "Captain, the other threat signatures, the ones retreating since we entered the sector?" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Zorak already understood. They weren't retreating from the retrieval team. They were retreating from Voss.
They stayed for 3 hours. Nobody planned to. Nobody decided to. It happened the way inevitable things happen. Gradually. Then completely. Brex sat down first because his legs genuinely stopped cooperating. Then Sen, pulling out her scanner and pointing it at Gerald with the expression of a scientist who had just discovered a new continent. Then Teshev, cross-legged on the jungle floor, navigation display forgotten, watching Voss move around the campsite with the quiet efficiency of someone completely at home. Zorak stood the longest. Then he sat too. Nobody spoke much. The jungle spoke instead. Vast, layered, breathing. Sounds that should have been threatening felt different here. Distant, respectful almost. Like the sector itself had recalibrated around this single campsite and decided, collectively, that something new was happening. Gerald fell completely asleep. His snoring shook the leaves. "How long were you planning to stay?" Zorak finally asked. Voss considered this seriously. "Another day, maybe. I wanted to complete the specimen catalog, and Gerald hasn't let me tag him yet. I need him more comfortable first." He glanced at the creature. "Tomorrow, probably." "You were going to tag him?" "For tracking data. Non-invasive, adhesive biomonitor. Barely feel it." Voss stirred the stew again, tasted it, offered the spoon to Zorak by instinct. Zorak stared at the spoon. He took it. He tasted it. It was genuinely and completely excellent. "Voss," he said slowly, "do you understand what this place is? What it's done to every crew that entered it? I read the mission files when I joined the Meridian." Voss was quiet for a moment. 12 Greth scientists, 11 years ago. Brex looked up sharply. "Their beacon," Voss continued. "I found it, about 2 kilometers northeast." He reached into his pack and placed a small device on the log beside him. Battered, scarred, still blinking its patient 11-year signal. "I think they panicked, moved fast, made noise, triggered predator responses. The jungle reacted." He paused. "It's not malicious here. It's just honest. It responds to what you bring into it." Silence. Deep, heavy, shifting silence. Brex reached out slowly and picked up the beacon, held it in his massive hands, said nothing. His species didn't cry, their biology didn't allow it, but something moved across his face that needed no translation. Those were his colleagues. "You went looking for it," Teshev said. Not a question. "I saw the beacon signal on the long-range passive scanner 3 weeks ago. Nobody else flagged it." Voss looked at her steadily. "Someone should have answered it. 11 years is a long time to go unanswered." Nobody had a response to that. Gerald woke up, regarded the group with slow, amber eyes. Then, with immense and deliberate casualness, he stood, walked forward, and lay back down. Closer this time, close enough that his armored flank nearly touched Voss's shoulder. The jungle breathed. Zorak looked at this human, this impossible, quiet, profoundly unbothered human, who had walked into the place that eats and simply refused to be eaten, who answered a beacon nobody else would, who named an apex predator Gerald. He made a decision. "Voss," he said slowly, "how do you feel about a promotion?" Voss looked up. "Does it come with a bigger specimen kit?" Zorak almost smiled. "We'll get you two." Gerald purred. The jungle settled, and for the first time in 11 years, Kethvara felt, somehow, less like a place that eats, and more like somewhere that had simply been waiting for the right visitor.